We will now review how to correctly enter income information on your FAFSA. You can follow these instructions to enter both student and parent income information. In order to complete the income section of the FAFSA, you will need to collect the following information for both student and parents if you're considered a dependent student: 2019 federal tax returns, 2019 W-2 forms, total of untaxed income, such as child support received, living allowances, veterans' non-education benefits, workers' compensation, and any other untaxed income you and/or your parents may have received in 2019. The name of tax forms and schedules can be found in the upper left-hand corner of all IRS tax forms. For additional instructions, select the question mark to the right-hand side of each question. Be sure to pay close attention to whose income information is being requested, either student or parent if dependent. If you or your parents have already filed a tax return, you will then be prompted to enter the type of tax return that was filed. Most people will have filed a 1040. If you plan to file a 2019 tax return but have not yet done so, or if you will not file a 2019 tax return because you did not work or you did not earn enough to be required to file, you will indicate that in this section. If you or your parents have filed a 2019 tax return, be sure to correctly report their tax filing status, which can be found at the top of page 1 of the 1040. Students and parents are highly encouraged to use the data retrieval tool. If you filed a tax return and meet certain criteria, you may be able to use the IRS data retrieval tool to transfer income and tax information from your federal income tax return to the FAFSA by clicking Link to IRS. An FSA ID is required to use the data retrieval tool. If your parent does not have a Social Security number, they will not be able to obtain an FSA ID, therefore will not be able to use the data retrieval tool. To use the data retrieval tool, after having selected Link to IRS on the previous page, you will need to complete this page with the information exactly as it appears on the tax return. If the information does not match what was reported on the tax return, you will not be able to link to the IRS. If you are granted access to link with the IRS, you will first need to check the box requesting the information be transferred, then select Transfer Now. If you use the data retrieval tool, this question will be pre-filled with Transferred from the IRS, and you will not be able to view or edit this response. If you were unable to use the data retrieval tool, you will need to manually enter the income information now. Adjusted gross income can be found on line 8B of the tax return, or 1040. If your parents are married or unmarried but living together, and they filed separate tax returns, you will need to add together the amount from each return to complete the income section. Even though you have already reported the adjusted gross income, you will now need to report the amount that each person earned from work. Income earned from work can be found by adding the following: Box 1 of W-2 form, plus the amount from Schedule 1, lines 3 and 6, as well as Box 14, Code A of IRS Schedule K-1, Form 1065. You should have received one W-2 form from each of the employers that you worked for in 2019. If you had more than one employer, you will need to add together the amount in Box 1 of each W-2 form. If you did not work, enter 0 for income earned from work. You will only have an amount on line 3 or line 6 of Schedule 1 if you were self-employed or had farm income or loss. Only in rare cases will individuals have filed a Schedule K-1. The FAFSA uses skip logic to determine which income questions to ask on your FAFSA. Do not be alarmed if you're not prompted to answer some of the following questions. Even though you may have filed the Schedule 1, you will mark no to this question if the only reason you filed the Schedule 1 is to report the following: unemployment compensation, educator expenses, IRA deductions, student loan interest deductions, Alaska Permanent Fund dividends, or virtual currency. If you use the data retrieval tool, this question will be pre-filled with transferred from the IRS. If you are asked if you or your parent are a dislocated worker, you can find the definition of dislocated worker by clicking the question mark next to the question. If anyone included in the household size received any of the following benefits in 2019 or 2020, you will select the checkbox next to the type of benefit received. These benefits include Medicaid, also known as Medi-Cal in California, Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP, free or reduced price school lunch, temporary assistance for needy families, also known as TANF, or special supplemental nutrition program for women, infants, and children, also known as WIC. If no one in the household received any of these benefits, mark none of the above. To find the amount of income tax for 2019, enter the amount from Form 1040, line 14, minus Schedule 2, line 2. If either line is blank, treat that line as a 0. Remember, not everyone will have filed the Schedule 2. If you use the data retrieval tool, most of these questions will be pre-filled for you. If you did not use the data retrieval tool, you will need to determine the amount, if any, to enter for each question. You will do so by referencing the appropriate line on your tax return. If the instructions do not reference a specific line on the tax return, you will need to determine the amount to report for each question. Be sure to utilize the Help section by clicking on the appropriate question mark if you need additional assistance. When reporting child support paid in 2019, do not include child support paid for a child that is currently being included in the household size. Again, be sure to utilize the Help section if you need further guidance in answering questions. Here you will report the amount of specific untaxed income received in 2019. These amounts cannot be found on a tax return, so you will need to determine the appropriate amount to report for each question. When reporting payments to tax-deferred pension, refer to your W-2 forms and only report the amounts found in boxes 12A through 12D for codes D, E, F, G, H, and S. Do not include the amount reported for code DD, which is the amount your employer contributed towards your health benefits. Some students will be given the option to skip questions about student and/or parent assets. If you choose not to skip these questions, or are not given the option to skip, be sure to report the asset value as of the date that you complete the FAFSA. Other students may be asked if their assets exceed a certain amount. If their assets do not exceed that amount, you will not be required to report any further information regarding your assets. To determine the value of an asset, determine the current market value and subtract the debt owed for the specific asset. There are a variety of assets for which you must report a value. However, you will never report the value of the home you currently live in or the value of retirement plans, such as 401k plans, pension funds, annuities, or non-education IRAs. If you or your parents own a business, you do not have to report the value if your family owns and controls more than 50% of the business and the business has 100 or fewer full-time or full-time equivalent employees.